Bandwidth for JS Party is provided by Fastly. Learn more at fastly.com. Welcome to JS Party, a weekly celebration of JavaScript and the web. Tune in live on Fridays at 3 p.m. US Eastern at changelog.com/live. Join the community and Slack with us in real time. Head to changelog.com/community. Follow us on Twitter. We're at JS Party FM. And now on to the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to JS Party, where it's a party every week with JavaScript. I'm Michael Rogers.
I'm Rachel White.
And I'm Alan Sampson.
There we go. Can't even get through an intro with it without Alex cracking wise. All right, so we got a great show today. We're going to talk a bit about Node.js native modules and VM neutrality. We're going to talk about Mastodon, the project, not the band. Although we may talk about the band too. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about how to get new people into JavaScript. So it's going to be a great show. We have this new thing coming into Node.js in the version 8 release. It's kind of a big deal. It's called NAPI. People have been calling it Nappy for a while, and then they decided that they are no longer going to call it Nappy, and it's just NAPI now. But essentially, so if you've done anything with Node.js for a long time, you probably at some point had to use a native module, or some module that you used a native module.
Wait. Yeah. Nappy? Is that because it means diaper?
No.
In Europe, that's how you say diaper in Europe.
Oh, really?
Right? Oh, God. I'm pretty sure like a nappy is like a diaper.
Yeah, it is a diaper.
Okay, cool. That's probably why we're not calling it that.
Come back to
for
that
native APIs. So
okay, makes sense.
Yeah. But anyway, so if you've been doing Node.js for really anything, you've had to deal with a native module. Native modules are we've been trying to rewrite the whole world in JavaScript, but sometimes you still need to bind to some kind of C or C++ module. And those modules basically get bound pretty much directly to V8, to the API or the ABI, the binary API that the V8 exposes. You probably use the modules that you're using that are native are probably actually using this middle layer called NAN, Native Abstractions for Node. But all that does is really just kind of marshal between older versions of Node and the V8 VM APIs there. So this has been problematic for a number of reasons. One is that like this really locks us into V8, but it also means that we break all of those native modules every major release of Node, because we take a new version of V8 and V8 has a new ABI in basically every release. So, if you've ever upgraded a major version of Node, you've probably had to recompile some of your projects in order to work. If you're on the front end, it's probably because of the Sass library. There's a really popular Sass library written in C. If you do database stuff, it's probably the Level ecosystem. If you do robots, it's probably Serial Port. So Serial Port's a native module, needs to get down in the depth there. There aren't that many native modules in the Node ecosystem, but if you kind of crawl through the deep dependencies, the depths of depths, about 30% of the modules in NPM are indirectly dependent on some kind of native module. So breaking all of those every release sucks. Nobody wants to do that. If another feature impacted 30% of the ecosystem, Node.js would do everything that it could to ensure that never broke between major releases. Nothing that impacts the ecosystem that much, other than native modules, would ever be considered in the core project. So we've been trying for a very long time to get past this, but the main problem has been that people need to support it. Like Google has to support an API that we can bind to indefinitely, right? They're not going to guarantee support for any kind of middle layer. So even NAN, this native abstraction for Node, it went through a big breaking change because of the way that V8 exposed its API. It changed so dramatically that it actually couldn't marshal between everything anymore, and it had to do a breaking change. So if we create an API and we want to guarantee that it's going to last forever, we need Google to support it, and we need any other VM that supports Node to support it. So that brings us to basically to IO.js. So in the IO.js days, we started working a lot more with Google. Google was very happy that we were taking newer versions of V8 in IO.js. And from that point on, the certain members of the V8 team, particularly from Google Cloud Project, have been working really diligently on Node.js and a lot of the integration points. And an effort was led by Microsoft because they, for Node Chakra, that's Node.js bound to the Microsoft Chakra VM rather than Google's V8 engine, they had to just emulate the entire V8 API. So they really felt the pain of this problem. So they led an effort along with Microsoft and even some people from Mozilla who are doing Spider Node to create a native
It's
API.
still going?
Yeah.
It's still going? Cool.
Yeah, well, it was rebooted.
Okay, got it.
I would not say still going. I think they took like a 4-year break.
Got it.
But yeah, so they got basically rebooted around this whole native API effort. And so now, for the first time, Node V8, Node 8, the 8th major version of Node.js, there will be a flag where you can try out this new native API and people can start binding to it. So it's really exciting because now major versions are not going to have these giant breaks. And if you write a JavaScript virtual machine, a lot of people are writing like new JavaScript VMs. You can expose this API in the future and Node will just work. Questions, comments.
So back to how we pronounce it.
Ugh.
It reminds me, there was like the knackle and p-knackle. Some people call it p-knuckle, which I always disliked. So
I mean, I liked calling it nappy. I was told shortly after the NAPI working group met that they did no longer wanted to call it nappy. Did not want people referring to it as nappy. So I've been respecting that, even though I don't agree. I liked calling it nappy.
I can understand why people wouldn't want to call it that. I mean, it could have a lot of negative connotations, not just related to diapers. So, but I mean, diaper, you don't want to associate your code base with diapers anyway.
Yeah.
You guys need to speak for yourself. Diaper.js comes out this fall.
Is that a library or a conference? Is that a conference at your house where we'll just change your baby for you?
No comment at this time.
So I'm like looking at this, the repository for this, and so you mentioned the Node SaaS thing, but like what are some other? I guess are these lists of modules, the level down, nano message, canvas, are these ones that already have enabled it and there's other ones that need to be converted in order to be compatible with it?
So one of the things that this whole project kind of identified early on was, okay, what are the most used native modules? And then let's make sure that we can support those. So it's virtually impossible to take everything that the V8 VM or the Chakra VM does and abstract it into an API that can just live in perpetuity, right? Not even, NAN does this, which is like the thing that everybody buys to today. But if you can look at the most common modules and the things that they do with NAN or with the V8 API, then you can get a pretty good idea of the minimum viable set of APIs that you need to expose. And so that's sort of what they've done with that list of modules there. It's the most common native modules. Many of them actually use NAN today. So if you can entirely support NAN and have NAN build on top of this native API, then you know that you can support most of those. And a lot of modules actually use, NAN for maybe 90% of what they do. And then they have, an extra little bit of code that just talks directly to V8 for some kind of other thing, like some operation that has to live outside of the NAN API because it doesn't support it. So they want to make sure that they support, even that last 10% when they go live.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
The Node GUIP, is that at all related to this? I feel like that's native something or other.
Node GUIP. I don't know if I'm really familiar with that. Is it a module?
Yeah, it's like super popular for like building native something or other. I think
here we go. Native Node.js implementation of Maxmind's GUIP API.
Yeah,
Cool.
I think this is in like half. Like I don't know if I've installed Node modules in my life, and this wasn't one of the modules that came down.
So this module looks like pure JavaScript, though. This looks like it's not a native module, though.
Okay. Feels really native-y. Whenever you download it comes. You had to get like the Node headers tar GZ thing, and that broke this past week. Whenever npm went down, which we could.
Oh wow.
About. The CDN went down or something.
Maybe This might depend on a native module, so that's probably what it is.
Okay. Anyways.
Cool.
Yeah. So the answer is no.
Yeah. I mean, another really annoying bit of this too is if you've done any Electron development. Electron has its own version of Node in it, and with its own version of V8, right? So if you have native modules, you need to compile them not against the command line node and command line npm that you run on the command line to install the native module, but you actually need to compile them against the V8 and Node that Electron uses and Electron has. So there's all this like crazy work that you have to do to swap out, the header locations and make all that stuff work as well. So, hopefully this will also make that a lot easier to deal with, because if they're all just bound to the same API, then they can just get compiled and be hunky-dory. So hopefully, we'll see. It's still very early days, but that's the goal. The goal is to make everybody's life easier and to eventually also have many, many VMs that support Node.js. So you can run Node.js on all these really tiny microcontrollers and devices and stuff, and they can have custom built engines that work really well for those devices.
I built guitar pedals, and I'm looking forward to the day when I can, on a $6 microchip, run all my audio transforms in Node.js.
Are we almost there though? Like, what does the Tesla 2 cost? I mean, the Tesla 2 is pretty close.
I think we're definitely almost there. I've been actually thinking about trying to use the Tesla for some kind of like live visual feeding thing, because I do visuals for like music stuff, and you usually need a resource with a bunch of clips, so it'd be easier than having to build a whole entire like mini computer with a Raspberry Pi.
I was wondering if, like, would it still make more sense that since Node.js is just becoming available on like these harder for Node.js to run devices, is it actually just an easier way to run like Go, or like something that you can't ever install? Just like wouldn't it be faster to write, like if you're really resource constrained, could you just compile Go via Mscript into JS and then do like WASM on the microcontroller for $6?
We just went through like 4 layers of compiles there.
But I feel like not that you can't write JavaScript and it would be good. I'm just thinking like in the audio situation, I'm constantly resource constrained, and I'm wondering if like just the fact that JavaScript can run there means that I don't have to write in whatever microcontroller bytecode directly. But
that's the whole point.
Yeah. But like JavaScript doesn't have like the memory management to be able to handle it on that resource constrained of a device, right? So I could I guess I'd need to write Rust, not Go, if I wanted a memory managed language, right? I don't know. Don't listen to anything I say.
Yeah, I mean, Suze is making a really good point in the chat here, which is that the value of writing things in JavaScript is that there's this huge ecosystem of modules that you can plug into, which
well, not necessarily for my use case. Like there are not a lot of guitar pedal modules currently. Right?
Well, I guess you're gonna have to make them.
Well, yeah, but I can make them Go as well.
But a lot of the underlying, like there's a huge bots community that you can tap into to help you build those guitar pedal modules as well, though. And there's a bunch of, people doing different audio stuff and different algorithms for messing around with audio that are, that work on top of web audio that could also easily be used in your module as well. So there are parts of the ecosystem that would be relevant for building guitar pedal modules.
Maybe.
Yeah. And and these devices are only getting cheaper and faster, right? Like IoT is an area where Moore's law is still like in effect at the single processor level. So they're getting faster and cheaper and faster and cheaper every year.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
So depending on how long it's going to take you to write this module, you may just want to bet on, the cost of that thing that's currently $14 coming down to $7 in a year. So
I don't even know Go, so this is purely hypothetical.
Well, if we're just saying hypothetical languages that you could learn, you could just learn assembler.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is like you get the benefit of a language that you don't mind writing, which I assume Go is, and then you can still do something. And I still think Go is actually a bad choice. Like Rust or something might be a better choice where you have memory management, it's memory safe, and then you don't have to write assembler.
So my issue with people who talk about like managing memory by hand as a feature is that like you're living in this crazy world where you want to do that and you're not going to mess it up, and very few people live in that world. And if that's the only world that you can be in order to access a particular device, then it's like I don't see a lot of software being written for that environment until it gets a little more democratized.
But I think that's the environment currently with like tiny $6 chips for audio pedals or whatever. That's all.
Yeah, you know, someday.
When does Node version 8 come out?
Soon. Oh man, I should really know this. We're working on a lot of the messaging stuff right now, but I believe it's this month. I think it's April. Yeah, April or early May will be the initial release. A lot of people wait another 6 months though, because for 6 months it'll be the current release. And we're a little bit more liberal about adding features and stuff like that. Well, it's the current release. So a lot of businesses and enterprises and stuff like that wait until we put it into LTS, where we have a slightly higher bar for getting code into it. But yeah, it will kick over pretty soon. Async await will also be in there. So that's fun.
What else is in there? Is there unless you shouldn't tell us, because then we can talk about it like next week or something.
I mean, I think that those are the two main points: is the new native API stuff and async await. And every time I say async await, there's actually a video of this on the internet. But so Ben Michael or Mitchell, I love Ben. He's like one of my favorite people, but I always forget how to pronounce his last name. He's an amazing musician. He worked for Andyet for a while, and he did the full soundtrack for like the real-time conf and all of that. Like really impressive stuff. Yeah, he's really good at karaoke. Yeah, I would imagine. But he did this song that was like it was to the tune of The Lion Sleeps Tonight, but he did it at NodeConf, and it was all about like different modules in Node.js and stuff. But the Awimbawe part was async await. And so now whenever anybody says async await, I just think of like Awimbawe. So yeah. Anyway, that was a random little diatribe there. Yeah. Shout out to Ben. Everybody go and download the real time conf soundtrack. It was awesome. All right. Yeah, I think that we're good with this topic now. Yes. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about getting new people into Node.js. Stay tuned.
No, getting new people into JavaScript.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was like, Node.js. What?
First sponsor of the show today is our friends at Sentry, helping you to find and fix your errors in your applications. You can start tracking your errors today totally free. They support React, Angular, Ember, Vue, Backbone, and Node frameworks like Express and Koa. You can view actual code and stack traces, including support for source maps, see the error's URL, parameters, and session information, and even prompt your user for feedback when you have front-end errors. Head to jsparty.fm/Sentry, start tracking your errors for free today. No credit card required. Get off the ground with their free plan, and when you're ready to expand your usage, simply pay as you go. Once again, jsparty.fm/Sentry, and now back to the show.
And we're back. We're going to talk a little bit about getting new people into JavaScript. So why don't you take it away, Rachel?
All right. So this is something that like people will come up and ask me a lot about at conferences that aren't necessarily JavaScript focused. They just basically don't know where to start, especially with, like how we spoke about like JavaScript fatigue and a bunch of other things. Like there's just so many places to start from. And like, where should someone start? Should they use React? Should they learn React before they learn anything else? Should they pay attention to jQuery at all? Should they, learn Ember or Angular or whatever? And that's, I guess, what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to say no to all of that. Learn vanilla. Only because I wish that's what I would have done. Which I kind of did, but I kind of just learned pieces of everything and then mashed it all together. So,
but like, how far do you take this, right? I mean, like Like I literally learned assembler and then C and then Perl, and like you can go way down the stack. So like
I
what
actually
is
learned
vanilla?
hardware logic gates, and then I learned
Oh,
assembler,
God.
or then I learned binary.
Oh God.
I guess it depends
See?
on
First,
what
I
your
learned about
goal.
silicon
I know.
and
See,
metallurgy.
like how far do you go? And like even in vanilla JavaScript, like what does vanilla JavaScript mean? Like do you learn only raw DOM calls, or like are you allowed to use jQuery when you're learning JavaScript?
Well, see, that I guess that depends on like, I mean, I've had jobs where they've gotten mad if we used jQuery, and then I've had jobs where like use jQuery if you would like to use jQuery, and it just, I guess it depends on if you want to focus on like front end, if you want to focus on back end, if you want to be full stack, if you want to do, you know, JavaScript robotics, if you want to do creative coding. It all depends on like what your focus is going to be, where I think you should start.
Well, and where does some of the tooling fit in though, right? Because like Babel is not vanilla JavaScript, like you are compiling it down, but you're also
Yeah.
technically kind of using like a newer version of the language. So does that count as, extra stuff that you're learning and not vanilla, or is it?
You mean like
close
somebody going in and like understanding ES6 syntax and stuff like that?
Like, should they start there, or should they start, without that tooling, in your opinion?
I don't know. That's a hard question because I mean, I can only speak from like what I struggle with as, you know, like somebody that definitely still does not understand algorithms or like anything like that. Like I'm pretty much like just solely good with you know, DOM manipulation stuff, front end strictly, well, and obviously like JavaScript, well, Node and Node robotics, but I'm a weirdo. So like my method was totally different, and I wish that when I started there was like resources available to me that there are available to people today. I think that like the JavaScript 30 course that Wes Boss just came out with is pretty decent. It basically just like it gives you an exercise, a small exercise every day, and you are slowly building up the I guess it wouldn't be muscle memory, but the repetition of like common things that you would use in JavaScript, like for loops and, you know, stuff like that to understand it.
I think that the question is a little bit loaded because it's like, should you start with libraries or should you start with vanilla or whatever? But
Yeah.
I look at it a lot like music, right, or something like that. There are people who like when they're 4 start like taking lessons, and then they learn all the fundamentals and they practice scales. They learn theory, and then they become musicians and are very good and have that type of knowledge. And then there are people who are like pick up a guitar when they're 15 to impress other people, and then they become musicians as well. And it's like it's actually much more important that you're just doing it in a way that you know you'll keep staying motivated than it is the actual path that you take. So I disagree that if I showed you a book of algorithms before you got into NodeBots that you'd be like, oh, that's something I'm interested in. It's the fact that you got into NodeBots and that you're now understand that algorithms can help you, that you're interested in learning those algorithms. You have to kind of learn that direction instead of the other one.
True. And I think that this like conversation is unique to people that don't necessarily come from a CS background too. Well, from my perspective at least. I'm speaking of like self-taught, self-driven people that don't have that like fundamental basis of like what is computing, you know? Like if you're coming from that like background, it would be totally different because you're going to understand a lot of the concepts of how the language is structured anyway.
Right.
So-
and just like in music, like the people who aren't classically trained always have like these weird, interesting, and not like these, like if you master the fundamentals enough, you can do weird, interesting things because you understand why they're weird and interesting. But also like the people who are self-taught or like weirder musicians are often more creative and interesting and do more fun things. Whereas the people who are taught via rote, like stay in the box more often because that's how they were taught. And it's totally possible to break out of those two molds, but I think that like follows somewhat pretty closely into development, just like any creative endeavor.
Yeah, definitely.
So like a while back, I got thrown into a couple situations where it was like, oh, like get these teenagers interested in programming, and
Right.
the thing that we figured out to do was like not try to show them code or anything like that. It was pull up their Facebook page, or like this is how long ago this was. Kids still use Facebook, but you pull up like a website that they go to all the time, and then right click on an element and inspect it, and then start manipulating the text in it, and they're like, oh my god, like this is not just readable, it's actually writable. And then you go from there to like copy out that element, put it on a page that kind of you have, but there's no style, so you've got to move over the style and manipulate it. And so you literally like work directly backwards from something that they're already interested in.
Right.
And like they're not going to learn entirely to program that way, but it is like something that will like capture their interest long enough for them to go, oh well, like, oh, now I should like really dive into this, or I still don't care. Which
Yeah.
is, some of them still aren't going to care.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I don't think that people should like just be explicitly exposed to chunks of code and be like, this is programming. Like if there's a project that you have an attainable goal in, and I think this applies to even just like anything, not just programming. If you have like a tangible or intangible, if it's on the internet, I guess you could touch your screen, whatever. If you have an end goal of an end project and you know what you're working towards and you're able to break that up into parts, it's a lot easier to see the big picture and understand the smaller parts. And I think that it's better to keep people's interest that way too.
Yeah, so the resource that I keep pointing people at that are new to programming is Free Code Camp, because it is sort of broken out into these structured lessons that you can go through. But each one, you basically get a certificate, and the way that they test you out of the certificate is that you actually work on a part of a real web application for a nonprofit. So the other side of Free Code Camp is not just like finding people that want to learn how to program, but also nonprofits that need web work to be done. And then they also have people that want to learn how to like do project management. So these people break it all up in the project management side, so that all these people learning how to program can bite off pieces of it and get certified. It's really cool. Like it's a nice mix of like good course material and then some real world practice as well.
I've also heard pretty good things that seem like along the same lines of Free Code Camp. I've about Code Academy's intro to JavaScript course. I haven't taken it myself, but I've seen that it gives you those incremental steps of working on different concepts as you go through. I also really like the Mozilla's developer network site for JavaScript basics, because it like tells you a story as it's telling you the elements, and I end up using it as a reference a lot when I'm working on personal projects. I should post that as a link. Stop honking? Jeez.
Yeah. So I think that the best way to get into JavaScript is to continuously do things that interest you, and the rest kind of follows. If you go about it the other way, like, I think once you get old enough and disciplined enough, like age is only barely related to this, but I found that like now that I'm older, I've learned enough things to know that if I just sit down and slog through the fundamentals or whatever for long enough, that it'll really end up helping me. And I have that lesson embedded in me. So if you're that type of person or whatever, it's not necessarily better, probably worse even, but you're that type of person, then like, sure, go learn the fundamentals as long as you can like delay that reward of actually being able to create things. But I think the most important thing you can do is make sure that you're not going to lose interest, because that's the biggest barrier, I think, to learning programming. There are plenty of people who want to, and like certainly it's difficult, and we can make things easier in tooling and documentation, all that stuff. But I think the number one thing whenever I've worked with people or I know people that are like, I want to learn programming, but I don't have enough time, or I started that and I never finished it, or like I read that book, but I still don't know how to do anything yet. And I think it's just a matter of like they haven't found the thing that grabs them enough to like to stick with it, and that's a tough thing. It's just like working out or losing weight or any other learning an instrument, anything like that.
That's a really good comparison, actually. Like diets, like a lot of people try diets and don't stick with them indefinitely.
Right.
Are you subtweeting me? There's one other resource that I love to recommend to people. Rebecca Murphy has this really awesome repository, and this is definitely like once you've got all the basics down and you are like more involved in understanding JavaScript, it's a whole entire repository that's built around testing, and the tests are broken and you have to figure out what you need to do in order to fix the tests. And I think that it's really good for people that are actually wanting to, like get into having a career for JavaScript. And it's always really great for like people that are starting out. So I'm going to paste that link too, because then it also gives people the fundamentals of like understanding how testing works. So it'll help in the real world. Ideally,
it's a little dated at this point, right? It's like
it was updated within the past year, but that might have been.
It's like links to the Mocha project was switched to the new URL to Mocha. It's actually pretty good. But just know that like if you jump into like a React code base, like they're not going to use any of these specific tools, but all the ideas are going to be roughly the same. And a lot of it's just like the syntax has gotten nicer, or like the environment has gotten faster or easier to call something. People still use Mocha.
So we sort of skimmed over this, but I think that like the motivation that people have for learning programming is like really big. Like we tend to always talk about this in terms of like getting a job, and that one of the reasons why we want to teach programming to a bunch of people is so they can get better jobs, which is like a fine motivator. But I think a lot of the reason why people stick with something is because they actually enjoy it. And a lot of people come to programming because like Suze was just saying, like customizing their MySpace pages was like how they first got into it, right? And then they stuck with it because they enjoyed it and they enjoyed that kind of thing. And I think all of us that came up in the early web were like, oh my God, like view source, holy crap. Like I can view the source and then like do something with that. And now like a lot of the result of some of these tools is that view source isn't like a good onboard into programming anymore. And like, so what are the places where like, there is still this level of customization that you can do and this level of playing around that you can do? Like one of the things that I like about NodeBots is that it's still just so basic. Like you sit down and you just wire up a few things together and it's really simple and you can see how it works and you can see a result immediately. But what else is like that out there?
I would say like the places that have popped up in order for you to do like code exploration, like CodePen, now Glitch, JS Fiddle, like those kind of things. Like if I'm on, like in the past, I've used CodePen to be like, I wonder what you can type in a keyword. So I'll be like, I'll type in glitch, no relation to the other side that we're talking about, because I want to see like what kind of really cool effects people are doing with glitchy stuff. And then I'll be able to go in and see all these pens that people have tagged with this certain aesthetic that I'm looking for. And I can view the code and then, play around with it myself. And that's probably the closest that I've found that feels the same way viewing source would be, because I definitely used to do that a lot too.
Yeah, my only issue with those things is that there's still like one step between a normie and that, right? Like in order to get to CodePen to search for something, you have to know CodePen exists and you have to know that you want to look for those things in order to learn how to program them. Whereas like the web in the early days kind of felt more like I was just using this already, and like I can now discover how it's built automatically, if that makes sense. And it's not a huge jump, but I think it's not insignificant.
I think the MySpace customizations were kind of like that too, though, right?
Yeah.
Where you were just kind of customizing your page, and then it was like, oh, what's this thing?
Right? Yeah, and the other thing, the like customizing your page is one thing, but you would then like you used MySpace not just for customization. You went to your friend's page and you're like, how the heck do they have a gradient background with rounded corners? And then you have to learn like that. Or like, does this button resize and have rounded corners? Are they using sliding doors? And then you'd have to like learn sliding doors.
That said, I mean, the reason why we probably don't use MySpace today is because the visual like damage that did to people and the site in general.
I mean, that's why Facebook won, right?
Right.
Yeah, I said it in the chat, but I've actually found that since MySpace died a while ago, the generation of programmers that are coming like into jobs and open source projects that I have often are talking about their Neopets page, customizing their Neopets page. So I think they're actually like end up accidentally being these probably more niche sites than I mean Neopets probably was big as well, but not as big as MySpace. that where this type of thing is still possible, and then these like little communities of people who accidentally learn how to program pop up, which is cool.
Yeah.
WordPress is what Adam's saying in the chat, and the which I could see. It's still kind of like there are one-click WordPress installs, and then you get into themes, and then you want to update. I actually think that maybe like the fact that everyone or a lot of people listen to podcasts, and then Squarespace sponsors every single podcast in the entire existence or whatever, and so you hear about that, and then you do Squarespace, and it's like these slightly modifiable things, like some of that. Just the ubiquity of the web kind of replaces the need for like a single product that makes this happen. So
yeah,
and like the ubiquity of apps and the coolness of like the tech culture, like among like Western society or whatever, are all drivers towards people like wanting to build an app or get rich or whatever, which push people in the direction.
I think a lot of the like older code, like natural code exploration that people did with like MySpace and Neopets wasn't out of like necessarily a desire to learn how to code. It was pretty much more of a necessity for wanting to like make something look cooler, and then that just ended up having to also be code. So I don't know what that would be now. If I've never messed around with Squarespace, so I don't know how specific you can get. Yeah, I don't know. That's
I think just the act thing. Though, just the act of saying like I have a website, not a Facebook profile, not a Twitter profile, not like something in a social network, literally like this is my domain name is like really far down the path of like, oh, you're basically going to start programming pretty soon compared just because of where the world is now.
I mean, there's not really that need of necessity to do it yourself anymore because so many places have came along to just like do it for you.
But I think that's a more fun way to learn, right? Like if instead of MySpace, there was like here's a hosting platform where you can host a profile that connects with other people's friends. Like that's GeoCity web rings or whatever, and that was successful, but not as successful as MySpace, right? So I think like going at it from that angle is giving someone something that they want in order to immediately get the gratification, and then telling them, oh, now you can customize this in order to like become cooler among your community. I think it's a really powerful mechanism for learning.
Yeah, but I don't think there's that many places that do it anymore. Like I don't remember seeing any sites recently. Like you used to be able to just like totally customize your own CSS and drop it into some places. You can't really do that anymore. But yeah, I guess Eric's saying Tumblr. Tumblr's definitely, I would say, a really modern equivalent of MySpace, though they have their own custom templating engine that people are having to use in order to like figure out how to display certain things on their profile. I think it's like pretty similar to like mustache templates, just like curly braces and stuff. And it also, a lot of custom Tumblr pages actually evoke those early mid 2000s design aesthetics too. They're like, maybe I'm just old, but they're also like very small type and like the cute little animations and stuff. So it's kind of like how it was, however long ago that is now.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I think we're about to take a break now. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about Mastodon.
If you're looking for trusted freelance talent ready to join your team right now, I mean like within the week, call upon my friends at TopTal, TOPTAL.com. And as a listener of the show, you might actually be one of those developers or designers looking for awesome freelance, independent contractor type opportunities where you can still be a remote worker. You can still have the freedom you have right now, which means you can travel anywhere, you can be anywhere and do what you do. We love TopTal. They've been supporting this show for a very long time. They're really good friends of ours. If you want a personal introduction, I'd be glad to give that to you. Email me, adam@changelog.com. Otherwise, head to toptal.com. That's TOPTAL.com to learn more. Tell them Adam from Changelog sent you. And now back to the show.
And we're back. Time to talk a little bit about Mastodon, the GNU social compatible microblogging server. The hell does that mean?
Servers. I will tell you what it means.
Federated.
So Yeah. So Mastodon is it is a social network and it is compatible with GNU Social. But what it's doing is if you look at it, I think that the UI is very similar to how TweetDeck used to be. So it is definitely trying to be like an alternative to Twitter. But the cool thing about it, and the reason that everybody is super excited about it, is because it's decentralized. So what that means is anybody can take the source code and spin up their own flavor of Mastodon on what is called, their own Mastodon instance, and then they're able to participate in the whole entire social network. So there are like certain quirks to that. So the main one is Mastodon.social. This is the original one that has been in development for a bit. There's also Mastodon.xyz. And so we'll talk about those two first. What they are is separate servers, but they're also separate federations. And the way that I've liked to compare these federations as a concept is like how Star Trek has federations. Basically, there's a greater code of conduct, a greater agreement across the whole entire Mastodon network as a whole. And that agreement is pretty much like, no racism, no sexism, no ableism, no isms, essentially. Be nice to people, tag your content warnings, trigger warnings, stuff like that. And then the main Mastodon social code of conduct actually like explicitly says like no Nazis and no Holocaust denial, no stuff that is against like certain laws in Europe, which is, hey, what place has a ton of Nazis and we don't want to hang out with them? Twitter. So a ton of people have made the jump over to Mastodon this week. The other really great thing is it's open source. It's primarily written in Ruby. The front end's in JavaScript. There's a ton of different instances now. There's Witch's Team, which is a French-based instance that's for people that identify with like queer, feminism, and like social justice issues. Nolan Lawson made one that is toot.cafe, which is for JavaScript people. And he's looking for JavaScript people to join that one and, play around with the front end. And the way that the federations work too is you have an account on one federation. So I am mastodon.social/oho. But I have a friend on Witch's Team, and her name's Kelsey. So she's, witches.team/@Kelsey. And I can talk to Kelsey because both of our federations have agreed that, yes, we have similar values and they are good. So we are going to be able to allow cross-instance communications. So you're able to talk to these other places that have common interests but different usernames because of the way that Mastodon is set up as a social network. That being said, Mastodon is young. It is new. People are still. It is new. Kind of a pun. People are still, trying to struggle with moderation. So there are some people that are coming in and like being shitty as they do on the internet. But one thing that I've noticed is everybody is like pretty much super nice. Everybody is nice, really encouraging. I had mentioned briefly that, oh, this is like given me a reason to really want to learn Ruby. And so many people messaged me and gave me suggestions, and they were like, you can do it. And it's just like a really positive experience, but that's because the community is so young.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions?
If I had a prediction, I'd say that it seems like it'll gain some steam, and it may even kind of rule the countryside for a few thousand years, but it'll eventually go extinct.
Oh, those cops are coming for you.
That was the pun police. Okay, so the UI looks a lot like TweetDeck. It's really similar to TweetDeck. It seems kind of optimized for like power users at this point.
Yeah, there's also though some really great mobile applications for it. So I downloaded one for my phone and it works great. That's for iOS. If you go to the main Mastodon repository, there's a whole entire list of apps already. And let's see, there's already apps for Android, and then there's stuff for iOS. Somebody has already ported Twit, which is the Node Twitter streaming API to allow you to make bots. So there's a Mastodon version of Twit. And I know that the bot ally community has embraced Mastodon. There's a bots.in.space Federation instance that you can join for making bots on it. People are already making tools. Darius, Tiny Subversions, made one for helping with OAuth with Mastodon. People are just like really, I think, excited about being able to, have their hands in something that they're using as a community and not have it being controlled by, companies. The cost to run a federation is, the same cost as it would be to run any kind of server. It is a server instance. You're just like spinning it up and running it on your own thing. So, that depends on how many people you want to be on your instance and, how you want it. And right now, like, I think that they're still trying to figure out the best way to have the main federations, which is .social and .xyz, get other people's instances added into those. So it's a whole process, but the issues page of Mastodon has a ton of stuff that you can like find if you're interested in contributing. You don't necessarily need to know Ruby. They even tag stuff as fit for newbies, which I think is really great. I don't know. It's just, I hope it succeeds.
I mean, it looks interesting. There's been a lot of attempts at kind of doing a federated social thing every time people get upset at Twitter or whatever.
Well, I think that the thing is, this has been being developed for a while, though. Like, I don't know how long the GNU social has been working. I guess I could Google it or Bing it.
It's also built on a lot of APIs that they've been trying to do forever. So like the open social APIs, the sub hubbub stuff, all of which, people have been developing for some of these like coming on 10 years now. And a lot of the products that originally those were being used in didn't really take off. But you could argue, that's not necessarily because of the protocol. It might be because of, the actual application or dealing with Twitter. But like, I mean, one of the annoying things about federation though is just like you don't want like I want to subscribe to Nolan Lawson. I don't want to subscribe to Nolan Lawson at whatever random instance that he happened to do. And like and how do I know that that's the right Nolan Lawson and it's not like the Nolan Lawson at some other one of those that is trying to be him with the same avatar or whatever. So
true.
There's
because he's verified his GPG private key against his other online assets. It actually reminds me a lot.
So you just lost like 99% of all users of the internet.
Yeah. So it's called what is the web of trust? Web of trust, circle of trust? Web of trust.
Web of trust.
So, I honestly think like web of trust stuff is GNU's GPG's like favorite term to throw around, but I think that works a lot in the favor of one of these federated networks, and it works for the 9 people who use GPG key servers as well. But it like if you've used Keybase, that's like a good example of knowing that Nolan Lawson is really like if you could verify yourself on Keybase along with like on Mastodon, which maybe it is like they should implement that, then you could know that this was verifiably like provably via math the correct Nolan Lawson. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
sort of.
Enough.
Well, one thing that I do want to point out that I think is important is I don't think that Mastodon is trying to be a Twitter replacement. I think that Mastodon is filling a void that a lot of people need. Like they don't want to interact with people that think trolling is fun. And so the explicit, like very strict code of conducts and specific federated instances that have their rules are extremely friendly to people that are like queer and transgender and, very interested in like communism and socialism and anarchy and that kind of stuff. And Mastodon has like came out of that to kind of give them a place where they feel safe like talking about this thing, and they don't have to think that every single anime avatar is going to be somebody that's going to tell them to go fuck themselves. And I don't know, it's I've seen a lot of tweets lately that have been like, hey Mastodon users, if you see people with anime avatars, they're probably just like artists and geeks and LGBTQ folks instead of Nazis. So actually, Nolan said this. So it's like a bit of a culture shock. And then I saw a post the other day that was very nice and interesting, and it was essentially. Oh my God, Mastodon is a way to be nice, but in a chill way to strangers on the internet. This is all I've ever wanted in life, is to make some mother feel good. Censor that if you need to. I came here to be nice to people and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of peppermint, but no worries. I totally have other flavors, so here, have some gum. And I don't know.
That was the most millennial thing I've ever heard in my life. That was amazing. It sounded like an ad for Grizzle from Parks and Rec or something.
Oh my God. I think it's really nice. And it feels nice to like go on and be in a timeline where like people are like not being jerks, and they're just like wanting to be helpful. And
so I wonder, so how are they enforcing that in the federated model though, right? Like I understand how you can enforce that in an instance, right? And have a code of conduct for that instance. But because they're federated and they're connecting to each other, how are they filtering the content out of the federation network?
Well,
do you want to go?
Like that's well, I'm gonna make a educated guess based on how a lot of the other stuff works. But like the federations can choose, like based on who you follow and who the people in the federation follow, what other instances to share content with or not share content with. So both the beauty and the pain of this is that it's perfectly possible, if not unlikely, for other social reasons, that like the Nazis set up their own Mastodon instances and then all federate with each other. But then like the crossover of those two federations is actually very small.
Basically, they would be isolated. Like other federations would opt out into seeing that stuff. So, if people do try and join and abuse the service, they're going to be isolated into those silos that they've created for themselves.
Right. So it's essentially like in 3 years, you have the Facebook timeline problem where you only are looking at people who are confirming your biases. Not that I think Nazis should have a platform for anything, but also like there is a chance for like hyper federation, not federation, hyper something, to where like it actually would be better to open up a little more, in my opinion. Like I tried to follow people who I disagree with currently on Twitter in order to just understand perspective and those types of things. In no way do I mean Nazis or misogynists or anything like that. I mean like fiscally conservative people or whatever. Like
I actually really hope that they do like create their own instances and have their own federation network, because then you're going to see them like fracture and get mad at each other.
Oh yeah.
Like the people that are like crazier and crazier. It's going to be great. So it's like the 4chan 8chan problem where like
I mean yeah. It's just subsections of horribleness.
Yeah, no, that's a really good example.
But man, I have to go now.
Okay. Well, share your pick with us before you go, and then me and Alex will get into our picks. So
I didn't pick one because I thought I was going to be able to go early.
Your pick is undefined.
What's your favorite hot sauce? That'll be your pick.
Oh gosh.
Well, I could tell you my favorite ringtone. It's not that one. I'm going to actually say that my pick of the week is going to be Nolan Lawson's branch of Mastodon, because I'm a moderator on it, and then come be nice with me and let's make cute things on Mastodon. Okay, I'm going now.
Yeah. Michael just got dropped. This episode is falling apart live. You heard it here first.
Hello.
He's back.
Okay. I'll stay and he's back. Okay, I'm leaving now. Have a good weekend.
I'm back.
Bye, Rachel.
Bye.
Yeah, for some reason, when my phone rang, Apple decided that anything else should just be cut off. So, yeah. All right. So picks. Alex, what's your pick?
my pick this week is GPG tools. That's a way to set up. Actually, that was a little bit of a joke, but my pick is Keybase. I think all of GPG is GNU Privacy Guard, which is an OSS version of PGP, which used to stand for Pretty Good Privacy. Maybe it still does, but it's all like encryption, privacy type stuff. So if you have like public key, private key, all that kind of stuff, to where you can kind of verify your identity with like big long things. There are like I'm trying to explain it in a way that makes sense, but nothing I do. That's the whole problem. So like if you've ever seen like an email come through and it says like begin PGP encryption, that's what this is. The thing that I'm actually suggesting that you use though is Keybase IO. So like you can do it. You generate yourself a private key and a public key. You keep the private key to yourself. You push the public key up to Keybase as well as other key servers. And then you can like tweet out from your Twitter account that says like, I'm this person on Keybase. And based on that, it kind of verifies that like you are really that person. And so it ties your social identities to your encrypted identities. And then if you need to verify that someone is someone, you can use those identities or send them encrypted mail if they know how to do that. So that's my pick this week, keybase.io.
Awesome.
It's kind of like a user interface for being able to do encryption and privacy and all that kind of stuff in an easier way than it used to be.
It's basically an identity authority essentially for
yeah. But yeah, federated in the sense that well, it's not federated. The service itself, but it uses other services in order to do those verifications. But it also doesn't need a service. It could be a web page or your email or something like that as well.
Cool. Awesome. So I've picked this before and I've talked about it a ton, but WebTorrent is just one of the coolest projects like on the internet. There's a whole changelog episode about it. There's a great desktop client for using WebTorrent. If you don't know, it's an implementation of BitTorrent on top of WebRTC and all of the peer-to-peer protocols that we have on the web now. But what I specifically want to plug actually is just pulling WebTorrent in as a library like you would anything else that you run through Browserify and using it in some of your applications. Like, so start playing with the idea of just dragging and dropping files into the browser and sharing them out like that. And think about like ways that you could integrate this completely alternate mode of content delivery and usage. So, and the changelog podcast on WebTorrent will be in the show notes. It's already been posted in the chat, so that looks good. That's the show for today. Thanks everybody for showing up. It's been a great show. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Rate us on iTunes. Go to GitHub/thechangelog/JSParty and suggest any new topics for us to cover. Also, we record live every Friday at noon Pacific. And that's it for the show.
That's the outro.
All right, that wraps up this episode of JS Party. Join the community and Slack with us in real time during the show. Head to changelog.com/community. Follow us on Twitter. We're at JSPartyFM. Special thanks to our sponsors, Sentry and TopTal. Also, thanks to Fastly, our bandwidth partner. Head to fastly.com to learn more. This episode was edited by Jonathan Youngblood, and the theme music was produced by Breakmaster Cylinder. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for listening.